Hey guys, Nike here. I wanted to start a new video series. As a lot of you guys might be aware, I've been sort of working on a project of open world stuff. I started a side guild called Burn, and we do competitive open world. We're the world's first elitist open world guild of where we actually try hard and run good builds and stuff. And one thing I've noticed from doing a shit ton of meta events in the open world is that most people are running completely inappropriately, terribly bad builds. And meta battle is no help with that. And for the most part, raid builds don't quite work the same, and I can kind of explain why later on in this video. But the point of all this is I have decided and I've figured out what the best open world builds are. And in a lot of places, they're quite a bit different than what you would see in a raid or in fractals. So I wanted to go ahead and share with you guys the builds that I have found most successful in open world. So it's going to be a couple. I'm going to do probably a build video for each of the main builds. But this first introductory video, I just kind of want to talk about the theory behind the builds and why they work, why raid builds don't work. Before we get into actually talking about any particular builds. So stay tuned, and hopefully you guys enjoy this, and hopefully a lot of people will get some good info out of it. So the first and probably most important thing to understand about large open world PvE meta events is that Druid is bad, and that is the foundation of everything. Druid is bad, and I'll explain why. In most open world meta events like Octovine or Shack Garant, Tangled Depth, Serpent's Ire, all that stuff, any place where DPS matters, people don't take a lot of damage. At Shack Garant, you do take a lot of damage, but you pretty much get one shot. There's no, like, if you eat a donut, you're pretty much just dead, and no amount of healing, you're not going to heal through that. So Druid, it brings some buffs, but it doesn't, the heals are irrelevant, and it really is just low value. It brings some buffs, but it does no personal damage, and the heals are largely irrelevant. So, what matters really is that every build you bring has to bring significant amount of buffs, and ideally you want to aim for as many 10-man buffs as you can get, obviously because they're higher value. But every build has to bring a buff. Selfish DPS has a place, and I will discuss that. But for the most part, you want to play a support build. But not just a 0 DPS support build. You don't want to play Minstrel Chrono or Druid or Harrier Druid or something that does no damage. What you want to do at open world stuff is play a hybrid DPS support build. A good example of that would be Core Power Warrior with Banners and Phalanx Strength and Golden Fried Dumpling. This build will put out about 20 might to 6 people, including the warrior himself, and we'll have banners for 10 people, and we'll still do a respectable amount of DPS. Not as good as a top DPS build, but still a respectable amount. This allows you to carry super hard. If you're playing a build that brings a lot of buffs, like Druid, but doesn't do any personal DPS, you can't quite carry that hard, because in the end, you're reliant on the skill of the people around you to take advantage and maximize those buffs. However, if you are playing a might stacking build that's also capable of putting out like 25k DPS, suddenly you have the ability to almost single-handedly carry these events. So it's super important that everyone understands that the ideal situation is a build that not only has respectable DPS, but brings very significant amount of buffs. And as we get into what the individual builds are, that is the most important thing to keep in mind. Now, the buffs that are critically important are might. Most of the people in your squad at these events are going to be running, are pretty much going to be running terrible builds, and they're just going to be auto-attacking. So even a person with a terrible build, if they have 25 might and fury, their auto-attacks will be significantly better. Like, some of these guys are playing like Power Soul Beast with Longbow and doing 3k DPS, but if you can put 25 might and fury on them, they are doing 6k, and that might not sound like a lot until you multiply that by 10 or 20 people. Suddenly that's a significantly higher amount of group DPS. So buffing is critically important, especially with might and fury. Quickness is the next one. Again, most people are auto-attacking at these events, so quickness is a lot more important than alacrity. Alacrity buffs good people's builds and DPS. Alacrity does not buff bad players nearly so much. Quickness, however, buffs both good and bad, so it's critically important to bring quickness before you consider bringing alacrity. Personally, I do think alacrity is great, and it has a place, and we'll be talking about some builds that are pretty significant alacrity generators, but it's super important that before you think about alacrity, that you think about quickness. So might and quickness are the two main things, and once you have those bases covered, your group is going to be suddenly doing a lot of DPS. So really, if you and a buddy can coordinate, and one guy brings a significant amount of quickness, and the other guy brings a significant amount of might generation, the two of you can, and you're doing respectable DPS between the two of you as well. The two of you can carry any event almost just with the two people, even if the other 20 people in your area are complete trash. The two of you will carry just by running smart builds. So, with that said, I'm sure a couple people will have some questions. So, feel free to hit up in the comments below. And over the next few days, I'm going to start uploading videos for the individual builds that I suggest people run in the open world. And we'll go from there. So, thank you guys. I hope you enjoy this series. I hope my mission to make open world better is something that resonates. We can't rely on the god-awful builds for open world on meta battle. We need people that actually theorycraft and create good builds to step up and help the people that play open world to improve their gameplay. And that's what I intend to do. So anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.